Welcome to another episode of GTN Coach's Corner, where we answer all your training related questions. In this week's episode, should I increase my mileage to run a sub 3 hour marathon?
Will intermittent fasting affect my carb loading?
How many different paces should I run at in training?
Will a back-off week reduce my chances of reaching my goal in a few months' time?
And how to cross-train to help my running. Let's get to your questions.
Yep, so first one from Alan Shrimpton. I seem to sit at 70 kilometers fine and hit 90 kilometers for my peak 2 weeks for a 3:08 marathon. They're 60 years old this year. Would love to get under the 3 hour mark, but do I need to build more mileage for this is the big question.
Well, I mean, 70 kilometers a week as an average and 90 kilometers in your biggest week is definitely there.
Really good going.
Yeah, I think you're there. I don't think you do. I think the simple answer is no. You don't have to increase your mileage beyond that. However, a sub 3 hour marathon is quite an ambitious goal, and therefore you have to do some very specific training to go sub 3 hours. Now, this means that those 70 Ks need to be broken down into the right mix. That means some race pace running, some slightly above race pace running, but not too much. And then your long runs need to be specific to build to your marathon goal. Now, we're not saying you should go and run them at sub 3 hour marathon pace, your long runs, but you do need to do some sub 3 hour marathon pace on tired legs in that week. So it is a good mix. It's finding the right mix of that 70 Ks in your week to make sure you get to that goal. You cannot just run 70 Ks a week and think you're there.
Yeah, and also as you are getting older, dare I say it, you will want to prioritize that recovery. So you are doing a significant amount of volume already. So take that on board and be careful with that recovery on top of that. So next question from Masiek Malenda. Hey, thank you for the great content. I have a question regarding intermittent fasting and race day. As I'm carb loading days before, should I decrease the fasting window before the start? I'm doing mostly 70.3 and full distances, and if I would stick to my normal routines, I would stop eating around 2 to 3 p.m. the day before. What are your recommendations? Interesting one, this.
Yeah, it is an interesting one.
Obviously, it's like a lifestyle choice that they've chosen. Maybe it works for them, and I understand that. But as we're going into a race, you do want to make sure your glycogen stores are as big as possible.
Yeah, intermittent fasting is a bit of a thing at the moment, and it does have its benefits. I think the main thing you want to adapt your body to is using your fat reserves for energy and that kind of thing. You don't want to be reliant on glycogen all the time. That's why you're doing the intermittent fasting. However, race day is very much about performance, and you don't want to be relying on a slow, low energy fuel source. You want to be relying on your glycogen, which means you want your stores to be as tipped up top as possible. And that means if you're fasting from 2 p.m. the day before all the way through to your race start, you're definitely not going to have those fully topped up glycogen stores. I would suggest you have something more, a moderate carb meal in the evening before the race, and maybe even top up those stores on race morning. It will definitely improve your performance. You are going to exercise on your glycogen reserves. Obviously, even if you're well fat adapted, you will still tap into those glycogen reserves for your performance. So make sure that on race day, you are primed for that performance, and you can stick to intermittent fasting the rest of the time.
And I guess this is quite specific to you, Masiek, but you have clearly been doing this in your lifestyle for some time now, so you won't be used to eating after 2 or 3 p.m. So be careful with that, and as James says, maybe a light meal after that sort of time, because you don't want to suddenly shock your system the next day and be having all sorts of issues. So bear that in mind.
Yeah. Our next question is from Gabrielle Ceccarelli. She says, hi, GTN Coach's Corner. I realized that I never run at certain paces. I run my easy runs by feel, resulting in a pace usually ranging from 6 to 6.5 minutes a K. And my tempo runs are at 4:40 per kilometer, my 10K pace or so. So I wonder, is it detrimental never to run in between? There's a wide range of paces that I'm missing. Could I maybe stay in low zone 3, 5:30 to 5:50 per kilometer for some runs? I'm currently training for 10Ks, half marathons, and my very first sprint triathlon. Well, that is, interesting question. Essentially, they're doing serious polarized training.
Well, in a way, I commend you. This is brilliant. You are doing a great job of doing that polarized training and making sure your easy runs really are easy and you're working hard when you need to work hard. Would I say it's detrimental? No, I wouldn't say it's necessarily really detrimental. You're doing a good job, but it could be better for sure.
Yeah, what you want to focus on here is specificity. And that means that you need to train at the pace you're going to race at. Now, while your 10K pace is great, for that 10K race. If you want to actually really perform in a 10K race, you actually want to do some efforts that are slightly above 10K pace, which is slightly faster. I mean, these are going to be short efforts, but they should be above 10K pace, which you are clearly not hitting at all. You're only doing tempo runs. Then you want to do some tempo runs, obviously, which are really close to your 10K pace, but this is then not your pace for a half marathon. Exactly. So then you need to do some efforts if you're training for a half marathon that are specific for that half marathon. If you're only going 10K pace and much slower for your long runs, you're not ever training at the actual pace that you're going to run for that half marathon. So you do need to do some specificity here. And that means bringing in some actual race pace. So yes, it is okay to train in that zone 3, that 5:30 or so that you for you where you are going to run your half marathon somewhere around there. It doesn't need to be a half marathon distance. It doesn't need to be your long run at that pace. Your long run can and probably should be slow and aerobic. But during the rest of the week, you do want to bring in some intervals and some sessions, some tempo runs that are a bit faster, that are in that zone where you're going to run your half marathon.
Something else I've actually found helped me over the years is things like build runs or slight progressions in a long run and tapping into some of those in-between zones, because naturally, our races don't always go to plan, and we may end up running a little bit slower than we intended. And what I found for myself is I had dialed in so specifically to certain paces that I had planned on running at, but hadn't in the end, and it felt really unnatural. So actually, by getting those paces in training, I became more efficient at those paces, and it just felt a little bit more comfortable, more relaxed.
Yep, specificity. Yep, don't miss those gaps. Our next question is from S Bond. #GTN Coaches Corner. I am competing in my first Ironman in Tenby later this year. Total newbie to all 3 disciplines, as I gave up running after a very nasty accident 10 years ago. 2 surgeries later, I'm the fittest I've ever been, but niggles are creeping in. Will pulling back at this stage for 1 week have repercussions come September 23? Sore knees and ankles after each run, it worries me. Keep up the great content, thank you. Steve. Okay, Steve, no, it definitely won't affect you to back off a little bit now. Essentially what you're talking about here is pulling back, giving your body time to recover from the hard work you've done so that you can do more hard work. And in fact, a well-structured program will actually build this into the program regularly. Often the structure is actually 3 weeks of hard work and then a recovery week, or what they call a consolidation week, where you can absorb all the work you've done, fully recover, and get ready to do more hard work. Most people put this in every 3, maybe 4 weeks. They do a week like this. You haven't done one at all and you're worried about a race in September.
And it may be why you have got some of these niggles creeping in.
Exactly, yeah. You can't just overload and overload and overload and overload. At some point you have to actually pull it back and completely recover. And that is the principle of training, to overload and then recover. And if you're not quite getting the recovery right, definitely take an easier week. It definitely won't slow you down come race in September. In fact, it'll almost certainly make you faster come September.
Yeah. Definitely. Right, final question from Yihua Chang. I do many sports, but running is still my priority, where I want to improve the most. Sometimes I can't, for example, injuries, socializing with friends who don't run, etc. So I cross-train with other sports like cycling and swimming to maintain fitness. Are there certain ways to cross-train, cycling, swimming, rowing, elliptical, so that my running can benefit the most? For example, cycling at 90 to 95 RPM to match my running race pace cadence of around 185.
Interesting question. I mean, especially for us triathletes, because we're essentially cross-training all the time. The other sports, the cross-training sports, the aerobic sports, will definitely help you running in that they build your aerobic engine. They will make you aerobically more fit, which allows you to run better. However, different sports and different cross-training is going to make a difference to how much of a difference they make to your run. Some of them are really effective at helping you run, and some of them not so much. Some of them don't translate. They will have that aerobic benefit, but that's about it. The most specific one would be probably an elliptical trainer. Much less impact than running, but does use the same motion and will train the same motion in your muscles, and therefore is quite specific. Next on the list is probably cycling, but again, not as specific, and you are not going to particularly run a lot better if you're doing too much cycling and not actually running. If you do want to improve your running is the best way to improve your running. Swimming is purely aerobic, but it is, of course, completely non-impact. So it is very good for recovering from hard runs and still getting that aerobic benefit. It really depends what you have access to. I would say first step, elliptical trainer. If not that, then cycling. Just make sure that you are getting the running work in between there, not cross training instead of running.
Yeah, not maybe quite as accessible or easy to do, but the other one is aqua jogging. See a lot of people using aqua jogging, a lot of elite runners actually do it. Even when they're not injured, it's just an opportunity to get the mileage or that aerobic conditioning up. I have seen a lot of elite runners also using cycling, and it's actually aid and help them in sort of strength on hills. The other thing to bear in mind is also strength work in the gym, because running is impact and weight bearing, and some of these other cross training sports that you're talking about aren't necessarily so much. Actually getting some strength work here, particularly around the glutes and hips, can really help when you aren't able to run.
Yeah, not aerobic, but it is time well spent, time in the gym. I hope those answered your question, and if you guys have your own questions, remember below this video or any of our videos, use the hashtag GTN Coaches Corner, and next week on our Coaches Corner we could be answering your question. Thanks for watching and keep the questions coming.
See you next time.